Thank you very much. Yes, and I've got my chat window open. So if you do have any questions, please ask them, and I will do my best to answer them. So today I am going to share with you how to go from who are you, like so many of us in particularly small business often feel like, it's a David and Goliath battle. How do you compete with people with big personalities and big names and big brands? And to go to, we want you to have people contacting you to do speaking gigs or to write content for them, or the media calling you to comment on a particular topic or issue. So my job here is to help you get noticed, stand out, and make some noise, which is always important if you're trying to, be heard. So this is me, so you know who's talking today. My background is in print journalism. So I started when I was 15, and it's like, oh my goodness, almost 30 years now I've worked in and around the media. So I started as a print journalist. I worked for The Australian, The Financial Review, The Daily Telegraph, and I've done lots of stuff in and around that. And then I've worked in corporate communications, so I went over to the dark side, the PR and media relations, where it was me pitching the stories to journalists. I've written a book called How to Be Your Own Publicity Genie, and I love telling stories. And I don't just love telling stories, I love hearing people's stories and helping them learn how to tell them. And when we say stories, we often get, caught up in thinking, well, does it have to have lots of narrative and be fictional? A story really is just, here is the problem that I'm going to solve for you, and I'm going to give you a solution to that. So we'll cover some of that today. So today you're going to learn how to find stories in your business. So I'm going to give you 5 tips on how you can do that. And from those tips, you can create well over 12 months worth of media opportunities for you as well. We're also going to talk about how you can connect with journalists. Quite often that's a scary thing for people to do, but today I'm going to hope that you leave and go, you know what, that's not so hard. And how to work the media, how do you make it work for you? But also how you can expand your thinking around what public relations is, and that it can be so much more than just tapping into the media. For me, public relations is everything you say and do. So it's what blogs you're writing, it's how you're showing up in social media, how you're showing up to networking, where you're contributing your ideas and connecting with people in that way. And the really important word in public relations is the relations word. PR is all about relationships. How do you connect with people authentically, not just journalists, but your target audience? So let's get going. So most people say to me, why would I even bother with PR? I've got so much else to do. I've got to look after my clients. I've got to make sure my admin's working. I've got to look after my finances. Your primary job in your business is to market your business. You're in business to let people know that you're there so they can come and buy from you and begin a relationship with you. And PR and marketing, it falls under the marketing umbrella, is all about using those resources that are out there is to connect people with what you're doing. And if you are using the media, then they will give you third-party credibility, and you can't buy that stuff. You can go and pay for advertising, but, these days who's got, a few grand lying around that you can place an ad in a paper? And even if you do, then one-off ads just don't work. It has to be about repetition and showing up and being in front of people's faces. And that's what PR does, is that if you can get articles in newspapers, you can be interviewed on the radio, you're showing up in Facebook groups and you're contributing, you're being published in online publications, you're being interviewed on podcast programs, you're writing books, you're marketing it, you are creating so many different touch points that you really go from, who's that person, to, oh my goodness, they're everywhere. And that's what you want, because when you're everywhere, when people are looking for an accountant or a bookkeeper or a PR person or a marketer or whatever it is that you're selling, is that your name comes top of mind. And when other people are talking about you, referral, word of mouth referral, which is what the media ultimately is, is that it gives you so much more power. And that powerful storytelling, which is what PR is all about, is that you learn how to relate to your target audience by tapping into their desires, tapping into their pain points, and being the person to be there to offer them a solution. And look, let's face it, not everybody's using PR because we are well and truly inundated and overwhelmed with all the things that we're meant to be doing in our business, that this just seems like one more thing to do. But, and I'm biased, in my book, it's the one thing that you should be doing. So the first thing, even before you approach the media, is you have to know who your target audience is. So if you haven't spent any time really nailing down and getting to know that person, they are part of what will build your brand personality. They are your target audience are the people that you want to be selling your story to. So you've got to know what makes them think. You've got to know where they're hanging out. And by knowing where they hang out is that you can then work out what media that you need to be connecting with. Because the danger of when you begin a PR journey and you've got no idea who your target audience is, or you think that, look, I've got solutions for everyone, so my target audience is everyone, is that you're then standing on top of a mountain and you're shouting out going, hey, look at me, I've got this great stuff here. And out of the 2 million people in Brisbane, or 3 million, 90% of those aren't interested in what you've got. So your words fall short. You don't get that cut through, and it's tiring talking to everybody. So for you, if you've not done this, it is worthwhile sitting down this week and thinking about, who am I really solving this problem for? What do they need from me? What do they need to hear from me? What are the problems that they have? What newspapers do they read? What podcast programs are they listening to? What online publications are they reading? What Facebook groups are they a part of? So that by knowing that, you can then laser focus your message and get it directly in front of them, instead of spending a year going, oh, I just don't know where they are. And then that's how you find out the media that you need to talk to. Instead of sending it to 50 media outlets, you know that you really only need 7 to 10 really great connections that you're going to work on building. Remember that relations word. This is about relationships. Journalists, and I'm speaking as a journalist, is that the people that I went looking for comments from, for content from, are those who got to know me. And I'm not talking, besties and they take me out for lunch, but they understood how I wrote. They understood the topics and content that I was writing about. They understood who my target audience was, who was I writing for. And then they delivered to me that content, and it made it easy for me to go, look, I don't have to go looking for this stuff, because every month this person shows up in my inbox with great stories. And even if I don't run them, and that's something that you have to learn to accept, is you're not always going to get a media win. But if you continue to build those relationships, you'll become that person that is, a great resource. You want to become a really good resource for a journalist. I've got a few examples I've scattered throughout this presentation, so you can see a real life application of that. This is Trish Mackie-Smith. Her goal last year was to get something through the government to change the laws around purchasing a property. So she was like, well, everybody should know about this. And I thought, well, yeah, okay. Everybody buying a house. But where are those people going to get their information about buying a house? They may not necessarily be reading the local paper, or they may not be listening to the radio. Perhaps they're reading property investment publications. So together we sat down and we built a segmented list. So we built it into, the consumer, and then also the service providers, in this case, the property publications who are educating the audience. And she had massive media coverage. It was such a topical topic that, once she appeared in the Courier Mail journalists started to chase her. And now she has a reputation as an expert in this area because of her passion and her commitment towards that. And she was always available. And because she got what they were looking for, we were able to craft messages that we would just send through a media release and it'd get picked up like that because we understood what the journalist was looking for. So number 2 is know the news. So now that you know your target audience, you know the journalists that you want to reach out to, is you now need to understand how they like to present that news. So you have to start reading what they've written or listening to what they're saying. And, every week, put aside some time to do a bit of market research on these people. Definitely, everyone's sitting there going, okay, well, how do I find these people? So there's a few ways that you can find journalist contact details. And trust me, they want to be found because it's harder and harder now to get out and go looking for stories. Back in my day, it was, you could just go out to the pub or go out to hang out where your beat was, where that topic that you were working on, and talk to people. Now the mainstream media is just being decimated by redundancies and cutbacks, that you've got fewer people doing more work. So if you can make it easy on journalists to give them good content, then they'll make it easy on you by running your content. So the best way to find a journalist contact details is get to know the news. So if you want to pitch to the Courier Mail and you are working in the education field, then you would be following the journalist who's writing all about educational stories. And you would ring their reception and saying, hi, I was after the contact details for so-and-so, and they'll give them to you. It is really that simple. A lot of publications will publish their contact details online. Quite often, though, they are publishing the generic news desk contact details, and it's always best to go straight to the journalist that you want to talk to. And, one of the best ways to get your information is actually ring them and introduce yourself. And I do this quite often, and I always say, hi, it's Annette from Publicity Genie. Do you have a moment to talk? Because part of getting to know the news is also understanding their deadlines. So with mainstream newspapers, when does their cut off for stories? When do they have their editorial meetings? With the radio, the dumbest time to ring is on the hour and on the half hour because they're in the newsroom presenting the news. TV news, they've got to get back to the studio by 2-3 o'clock to start that process of editing and doing their talkover pieces. So if you can get to know that, and it takes a little bit of time for you to do this is your homework, is that you've then got a comprehensive list of, okay, I know I can ring this person at this time, and ring them and have a chat. And when you're pitching a story, you really want to do the so what test. So you're sitting there, you're going, oh, like me opening my new shoe shop, that's like really exciting to you. So you need to go, so what would be interesting for my target audience and for the journalist if they were to run this story? So if it was an announcement, okay, maybe. Always try and think, what is another interesting angle? And you'll get a better handle on this by getting to know the news that your journalist that you want to connect with is running with on a regular basis. And a good way to do that is, and I'll cover that in a little bit later on. So this is Kevin. I work with Kevin. Knowing the news is also about knowing what's going on and how you can tap into that. And that's called newsjacking. So at the time of this interview with Channel 7 and Channel 9, he was running a big conference down the Gold Coast, and he really wanted to get some visuals. So at the time, it was leading into the federal election, and a big conversation was about negative gearing. So he had in a room 500 people, and we staged a vote. So hands up, who thinks that whatever the question was. And knowing that that's what TV news is looking for, great visuals, something controversial, they flocked down there, and he was on the news that evening, in front of millions of people. Okay, number 3 is to get to know the journalist. So this is all tied up in how to get to know the news. So you go find their contact details. You maybe have a phone conversation with them and say, hey, this is my business. This is what I do. My topics of expertise are this, this, and this. I'm just ringing to introduce myself and say, if you ever need anybody on these topics, please keep me in mind. And you can follow that up with a media kit. So a media kit is your one-stop shop of all the information about you. It's got your bio, awards that you've won, if you've written books, what your topics of expertise is, what your expertise is, if you've got degrees or you've got, your work experience, what makes you the expert. Because knowing the journalist is knowing why are you going to be attractive to them? How can you stand out from every other expert in your field? And that's really by making contact with them, because so many people don't. They're just too scared, because it's like, well, what if they don't want to talk to me, or what if they're horrible to me? And, that's something that you just have to be prepared for. But it's not as bad as what you think, because every day people are saying no to us. If you're in business and you're pitching your product or your service, not everybody's banging on your door. So you really just need to make a few really good connections. So how do you get to know the journalists as well? You can follow them on Twitter and on LinkedIn. If you've ever watched the nightly news, quite often you'll see the journalists standing there poking on their phone. They'll be tweeting about what they're doing. So you can follow them on Twitter and on LinkedIn and comment on the stories. So your name keeps popping up. Back in the day when people used to, well, they still do, but not in the volumes they do now, write into newspapers letters to the editor. There would be people who would get jobs as journalists because they were always writing in really awesome content and ideas to the letters to the editor. They stand out because they're active and they're engaging. Okay, number 4. But I'll talk about Nicole first. So Nicole Van Hatten is an expert in helping women overcome overwhelm and burnout in corporate. And, by knowing who her target audience is, we worked out that she had, a couple of options to go. Is that she really wanted to connect with corporate women. And I said to her, well, there's 2 publications that I think would be awesome for this. One is a glossy magazine, which is this one that you can see here, Mission to End Death by Desk. And the other one is a local newspaper. So the local newspaper is, more community-based, very parochial about their local area. So we pitched the same story with different angles. The glossy magazine was very corporate-based. This is what's happening to you. This is how Nicole can help you. And we pitched the same story to the local newspaper, but we made it more about her because that's what they're interested in. So by knowing that's what each of those publications is, we were able to get the same story run around the same time, but with a slightly different flavour and look and feel. Number 4, know the deadlines. And as I said, I always ring and say, is it okay to talk? But I know the deadlines, and I've briefly touched on that for you, is knowing that, you don't ring at half hour or on the hour, because they're going to get cranky with you. And that's happened to me a few times, where you just get excited and you ring up and they're like, why are you ringing? I'm about to go into the newsroom. So the whole idea of knowing the right times to contact is knowing that journalist is going to be in a more receptive mood for you. So it's a game that you're playing. But if you want to win this game, then you have to understand the rules. And the next deadline that you want to meet is if a journalist says to you, can I interview at this time? Or can you get this stuff back to me? Always ask, when's the deadline? So you have a sense of urgency about getting that back. And quite often, if you let a journalist down, they don't come back to you again. But in saying that, if you can't help them, be upfront. be honest about how you can help and how you can meet their needs. And like one of the things that I find endears me to journalists and why a lot of them contact me, not even about my clients, is because I believe in the law of reciprocity, is that the more that you give, the more that you get back, especially without the expectation of, well, if I give you this, then you're going to do this for me. Is that if a journalist contacts me and says, I'm looking for, like an engineer. Now, I don't work with any engineers at the moment, but I know engineers. And I can say, well, look, I actually don't have anybody, but so-and-so does. I'll give you their contact details and I'll let them know that you're calling. So be helpful. Journalists appreciate it and they appreciate you being honest with them. So this particular article appeared in an expat publication. We understood that it was a quarterly publication, so we had a very long deadline to meet. And what we did was we made sure that we met it early. We wrote a really great story all around, this person, what they're after. We were positioning her as an expert in this particular field of migration. But we wanted people to know that she was a real person, that there was a reason for why she was doing that. So if she was going to go from who are you to we want you and stand out from all the other partner visa organisations out there, that we made her into a person. So by understanding what this publication was looking for, they didn't want a salesy piece, they wanted a human interest story. And by understanding the deadline, we were able to get that in, and we got half a page in this publication, which was excellent because the journalist appreciated that we met their needs. Okay, this is the bit that I love the most. How do you find good stories in your business? And look, and I'm not just talking stories about media, I'm talking about any type of content you're creating, because I truly believe that if you can come up with 4 good stories a month, then there's your blogging, there's your social media, there's articles you can contribute, and there's things that you can turn into media releases. So by knowing your target audience, knowing who your media is, then you can work out which of these stories is the most appropriate. And you'll get some ideas too through your research of working out what's the right media outlet for you as to how you can shape your expertise into types of stories that they want. So I'm coming here from the perspective of being in small business and that I'm pitching stories to business publications. Pardon me. So the first one is how-to articles. So you see them all the time. And the reason that you see them all the time is because they're informative and helpful articles. So you go back to what is the problem that you're solving and how can I provide solutions? So these how-to articles could be, how to do a budget in under an hour, how to prepare for Christmas when your family's coming, 7 ways how to do this, 5 ways to do that. And if you just sit down and brainstorm all the how-tos that you do, all the how-tos of what you do for your clients, I can guarantee you'll come up with at least 15 story ideas that you can flesh out. Now, newsjacking. This is my favourite thing to do. So if you go back to that story with the guy who was being interviewed by the TV news, we newsjacked that story. That week there had been so much conversation in the media about negative gearing that we sat down and brainstormed, how can we tap into this and put our spin on it? So newsjacking essentially is that you see something in the media or in a publication, not just mainstream media. You can be talking online publications or your local paper or a magazine that you really want to get into, and you've seen they've done a story and you think, you know what, they haven't actually touched on this aspect of this story. And you can go, you don't even need to write a media release. Find their contact details, ring up the paper. Hey, can I have Sarah White's details? I want to talk about migration and that this is actually how much migration fees have increased over the last 3 years. and ring them up. Say, hey, my name's Annette. I'm calling from here. I was reading your story about this. I have another perspective that I'd like to share with you. Do you have time to chat it through? Or send them an email with the same thing. So a way to keep on top of this is to set up Google Alerts. So under your keywords, under the names of the journalists that you're looking to connect with, and every day into your inbox will come a steady stream of potential story ideas for you. And another way to use newsjacking is to look at, what people aren't talking about. I had a meeting today with someone and we were talking about employment law. And there's this whole area of employment law that she's constantly getting clients for that no one's talking about. And it's like, well, why aren't they talking about it? Is it because it's too uncomfortable? Well, let's go out there and see if we can generate some conversation. So number 3 is case studies. If you're working with clients or customers, you would have stories of how your product or services worked for them, or how it's, impacted somebody's life, or how they found you, or how they've gone on and referred you to people, or how it's changed the face of their business, or how it's helped them save money. So you can go to your clients and say, hey, I'd really love to pitch a story to whatever the media outlet is that you want to go to about what I did for you. Would you be okay with that? And for them, if they're smart, they go, yeah, there's PR for me that I really don't have to do anything about. The next one is human interest. So I always believe the very best story to start with if you're just starting out in PR is your story, your hero story. Now, it doesn't mean that you've had to go out and conquer lions and tigers and bears, but how did you get into business? Like, we as an audience want to be inspired and motivated and moved. Emotion is an incredibly powerful tool when it comes to building connection with your target audience. And if you think back to Emma's story in that expat publication, is that story was about why she is so passionate about helping people who love each other, who are separated because of immigration laws, to be together. That makes her real. She's not just, some ad on Facebook or some ad in a newspaper. She's a real person who has a real reason to be doing what she's doing. And that's what your hero story can do. Talk about why you're in business. How did you get to be in business? And it doesn't have to be all drama, and it doesn't mean that you've had to overcome, major obstacles. It can just really be just around why you do what you do. And your local paper could be a good one. If you've entered an award and you've made it to finalist, or you've written a new book, you can tie your story up with that and pitch it to your local Quest newspaper or your local community radio. And that's a really great way to dip your toe into the water and get some great PR. Just yesterday, taking 8 women to New York in November, I've coached them and guided them through the process of entering an international award. And because of the work that we've done together, all 8 women who are going are all finalists, because we understood what the judges were looking for. No different to a journalist. We knew what they needed to hear and we gave that to them. So yesterday I went around pitching their stories to local newspapers. And out of the 4 I've pitched, 4 have been picked up because I wrapped it around, here's a local person in small business. They got into business because this was their drive and their reason. And now they've been recognised with an international award. If we look at public relations, I said the relations word is really important. The public word is about perception. So as an expert in whatever that you're doing, is that you take for granted your skill set. And you, like I was talking to someone this morning, I'm going, we can do this strategy, then we can do this, then we can do that. And she went, oh my God, that's gold. And I'm like thinking, really? Like, isn't it just like, wouldn't you just think that to do that? No, that's my expertise. I take it for granted. We all take our expertise for granted, and you can share that through that human interest element. The last one is problem solving. So I'd like you to action this, and here is, I would say, 10 to 12 blogs or media releases, which is a whole year worth of content that you can go and start working on now. What are the problems that you solve for your target audience? How do you make their life easier? And sit down and brainstorm all of those. And you'll find that you've got a lot of good content there. So this is love this human interest story. So a lot of us hide our failures because it can be a bit embarrassing to know that, you've stuffed up and things haven't gone well. But when you're building relationships with people and you want to go from who are you to we want you, now more than ever, we're looking to connect with real people. We don't want the slick and the smarmy. We don't want the salespeople. We want people who are real. We want people we can relate to. And this particular lady has built a very successful business, but she actually failed abysmally twice. Once, like in so much debt, it was crazy. And then the second time, her business was shut down because of a negative news story on Channel 9. But we used her story on many different occasions. Same story, we just tweaked it slightly. This is a women's publication. It's a little bit blurry, I'm sorry. But we talked about how failure actually means that you're successful. Because it means that you've learnt something. It means that you've gone on and built on those failures to be bigger and better. And now this lady's speaking at networking groups. She's winning awards because that authenticity and that realness of her story makes her relatable and allows people to connect with her. So number 6 is tell, don't sell. You think about when an ad comes on TV, like most smart TVs now, you can skip through the ads. You don't even have to watch them. We tape things and we can skip through the ads. We watch Netflix because we don't want to watch the ads. We don't want to be sold at. You think of how you subconsciously cringe when you walk into a shop and the customer service person comes up and goes, can I help you? And it's like, no, just let me have a look. We're over being sold to, we're over being told what we need to do. And the beautiful thing about public relations is that it's about telling stories. It's about connecting and relating to people. It's about giving them something in return for their time, for listening to you, or for reading your content. And that's why I say those how-tos, the problem-solving stories and the human interest stories are the best ones that you have in your business, because you're giving something back. You're building a relationship. And now more than ever, people are not doing business with businesses. They're doing businesses with people. That's why they want you, because they know, they like, and they trust you. So storytelling is not advertising. Advertising is saying, hey, look at me. I'm amazing. You need to come and buy my stuff. Whereas storytelling, particularly if you get your story in the media, is around, hey, we think this person's really good. We think they're so good that we've put them on page 3 of our newspaper and we're sharing their story with you. And when it comes to your blogs, it's a similar type of concept. You're not sitting there going, buy my stuff. You're saying, hey, I know that you've got a problem, and have you tried doing this, this, and this? So we are bombarded now by over every day 5,000 pieces of marketing. A lot of the time we don't notice it, but it's there. we're overwhelmed, we're overflowing with just being spend, spend, spend. Wouldn't it be nice if people came to you to spend because they felt like that you actually cared? And a good way to tell your story is to find your hook. What is it that's going to bring people to you? What is it that's going to say, hey, come over here, I want to share something with you? And what's your angle? How are you going to position yourself that people see you as someone who's genuine and wants to share that information? So as you work through your stories, those problem-solving stories, have a look at how you can angle those stories so it's not about you going, oh, I'm in PR and I'm selling this product, come and buy from me. Instead, I'm in PR, here's someone's experience that I'm sharing with you. These are the results that we've got. Here's how you can get those results. And just doing that consistently over and over and over again, you keep showing up and people keep seeing you and they're going, you know what? I really like the no pressure of that person. So this particular story is one of my favourites. It's one of the first I worked on when I first started my PR agency back in 2014. It seems so long ago now. This particular lady has a granny flat business out in Ipswich, and at the time the Ipswich City Council had just changed the rules that you could now use granny flats as a source of investment income. So you could rent it out. You didn't just have to put, you know, your kids or your grandmother in there. You could now get tenants in and be making money from it. So she was telling me, she's really excited, like it's a big thing. And I went, yeah, that's great, but like that's boring, pretty blunt. And I went, tell me about a client that you're working with. So this particular lady here, Pat, she lives with her friend, Jim, and they were like, the house was so small, they're kind of getting on top of each other. So she approached Sonia and started building this flat. Now, their story was so cute and so warm and so relatable, particularly, you know, with the cost of housing and, you know, people not quite ready to move into aged care, that we pitched this to A Current Affair, this story about Pat and Jim, and they snapped it up straight away because it wasn't a story about someone selling something. It was a story about real human beings who were facing real problems and had found a solution. So as a result of that A Current Affair, she got some local media in, you know, we had pitched the story of, you know, granny flats for investments just as a mainstream story, and they'd ignored it. We went back to them with this story and they loved it. And it got repeated throughout the country in areas where this particular law was coming into effect. Number 7 is respect the time of the journalist that you're connecting with. So it goes back to deadlines. Is if they ring you, if you send out a media release, then know that in your planning, I'm sending out a release today. So over the next couple of days, I may or may not get a phone call. I may or may not get an email back from this journalist. So you want to be on it. You want to be observing what is going on around you so that you don't miss this. I had a client once, you know, I'd organised some radio interviews for him and he just forgot, even though I reminded him. And I have not been able to get another client on that radio station because the producer was so annoyed at me because this guy didn't show up. They had a big gap in their show. Looked bad for me. It looked bad for him because he never got another interview on that show either. So if they make a time with you, make sure that you are there, you show up. And when you're being interviewed, be enthusiastic and engaging. Yes, I know it can be a bit frightening, but just be you. Answer the questions. If you don't know the answer, don't make anything up. Stick to the facts and make it easy for the journalist. So this particular story, this is actually a story about patience. This story was pitched to, ran in the Daily Telegraph. We actually pitched this story 6 months prior, and they came back and said, nah, not interested. And then one day I've got Google Alerts set up for all my clients. This popped up in my Google feed, and it was like, there you go. You just don't know when they're going to use your story. So, respecting time is also about respecting that if they say no, it may not mean no right now. But because I kept in contact with her, mind you, she never got back to me. But I just kept going back and saying, hey, this is what he's up to now. And when this story came up, she went, oh, I know the perfect person to ring. Number 8, to infinity and beyond. Oh my goodness, one of the best things that you can do with a media release that doesn't get picked up is repurpose it. Turn it into an article. Turn it into social media posts. There's a really cool tool called Canva. It's free to use, and they've got all of these templates that you can use to create Facebook posts. So you can pull bits out of your media release and have 2 weeks of content on Facebook. You can repurpose your media release into a blog and post it onto your website. You can use your media release and go and post it on media distribution sites like PR Log and PR Wire. They're all free to use. You can repost it onto Google+. You can repurpose it and put it onto LinkedIn. So that one piece of content that may not have got you what you wanted in the media can still be used to be creating this flurry of activity around you and who you are and what you're doing, expanding your reach beyond just the media and just one particular platform. If you really truly want to be We Want You, then you should be sharing across the board. And that really is just about making time every week to go, okay, I've sent this media release out. It didn't get across the line. I'm now going to do this, and this, repackage it, and then send it out. You can get a VA to do that, or you can spend I'd say an hour a week on your marketing and your promotion to be getting these exposure. And to infinity and beyond is also more about than just tapping into mainstream media. As I've said repeatedly, it's also about using social media. Social media is a really great way to build your public profile because, look, something like 94% of Australians are on Facebook. And I think it's something like 65% of those people go to Facebook to get their news. Journalists use Facebook to go find stories. They are part of groups that is under their topic of expertise that they monitor what's going on in the feed. So if you're putting in this great information, then they're going, wow, this person's always posting great stuff. I'm going to connect with them. I'm doing a story on this. I need to speak to that person. And tap into new media. There's just so many fantastic online publications that you could be using and creating backlinks, driving traffic back to your website using your keywords. So when you're sitting down and you're thinking about PR, don't just put all your eggs in the media basket because they can be a fickle beast. I've come from that background and this year more than any, there have been so many redundancies in mainstream media that they are truly going out and they're stripping Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds and Instagram feeds for stories. I posted the other day about a story of a guy who posted on Facebook about how to get better service at McDonald's. And the publication was overseas, just duplicated his post and the feedback that he was getting, and that became a news story. So there's incredible power there. Okay, number 9, pitch your story. So you've found your story, we've covered that. We've got an idea of how we're going to find the journalists and how to get their contact details. So the next thing that you want to do is pitch it. So that means you're sending your story, you're giving it to them for their reading pleasure and to decide whether it's worthy of their time to contact you. So your media release is your bait. So that's how you get their attention. So if you're not sure how to write a media release, there are stacks of free resources and tools online, on my website, anywhere. Write in how to write a media release and it'll show you how to do that. And if you're not really sure if you've got a story, you don't even need to write a media release. You just send the journalist an email and you cover the who, the W's and the H, who, what, when, where, how and why. So what is the story about? Who are you? What makes you the expert? Why is it a good story? Why would their audience be interested? How, like how is it happening? How is it going to change people? Answer that question. And when? Is it next week, next year, next month? And the why. Why is this story? And always go back to what's in it for their audience. And number 10 is follow up. Oh my goodness, this is probably the most important aspect of working with the media. Is a lot of we're inundated with information, journalists even more so, is that if you've sent them an email, it could have gone into spam, it could have got pulled up at their firewall, they could have missed it, they might have been away. So follow up, ring them back, follow up with an email. This is your second chance at selling in your story. It is your opportunity to give them more information. So this is part of the following up process was this particular media outlet said, yeah, we're really interested. And then I never heard from them again. So I rang them and said, hey, you said that you're really interested in this story. Do you want me to do it? Would you like me to write it for you? Would you like to write it? And they went, oh my goodness, if you can write it for me, we'll give you a spot every month. Oh, hello, what a great outcome. And the last is don't give up. It can take 3 years to build a brand that resonates with people. It can take that long for you to get to the point where you go, I'm no longer chasing jobs, they're coming to me. PR is a long-term strategy. It's about planting a seed, watering, and it takes time. You have to be persistent, you have to be consistent, and you have to be resistant to giving up because it will work for you. You just have to keep going. So, and the last thing is embrace your genius. You're an expert at what you do. You have knowledge that I don't have. You have information that needs to be shared. Don't be shy. Don't be modest. Get out there and promote yourself because nobody else is going to do it for you. I'll leave you on this. This lady is one of my clients. She's one of the most humble, nicest people I've ever met. And she's like, oh, I feel uncomfortable about that. And I've just learnt to ignore her now because she pays me to ignore her. And so I pitched this story to the Herald Sun and she got a 2-page spread with her. That picture was actually a full page with her and a big pepper grinder. Mm-hmm. And the amount of time she gets stopped now and the work that she's received because I just ignored her and said, you know what? You've got knowledge that people need and these guys want to share that. And go forth and stand out. Connect your story with the right media, reach your ideal audience, and you'll start to see the fruits of your labour. If you want to contact me, here's all my details. Actually, use hello@publicitygenie.com. That one's not working for some reason. And thank you. Is there any questions?
Thanks, Annette. I think we've got a few questions in the question box.
Oh, they didn't pop up while I was talking.
That's okay.
I put mine in the chat box.
In the chat box?
Yeah. I had it open and then it closed down and it normally will show that you've got a question there. So do you want me to run through these questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so the first one is how do you crack the PR nut? Yes, it's time consuming. Did I answer that question through how to crack the PR nut? I'd like to think that the last few slides is it really comes down to being consistent about your engagement with the media and not giving up. There is really, I'd love to say to you, yep, I've got the magic formula for you to be able to make this happen. there is no magic formula. When it comes to building relationships, that takes time, and you have to commit that time to doing it. So how do you crack that PR nut? Get your diary out, put in an hour a week where you go, this week I'm going to do this, and create a strategy around it. Strategies are really important. Is what's my objective for doing this? What do I want the outcomes to be? And who do I need to connect with to do that? And every week or every fortnight you're going, well, I'm going to make sure that I connect with, Ashley Jones from the Courier Mail in the health section, because, I'm a naturopath and I've just discovered something new, and I'm just going to keep letting her know that I'm here. Tips for writing engaging content. So when it comes to a media release, my tips for writing engaging content is stick to the facts. Don't try and be too clever, and follow that who, what, when, where, how, why. The way that a media release works is all the really important information is at the top. It's called an inverted pyramid, and journalists have been using it for years. And it means that if I'm just glancing at your media release, in the first couple of lines, I can see exactly what the story is about. Don't waffle, and speak like you speak. Don't pretend to be anything other than you are. If you don't use big words, don't use big words, because you'll get caught out. And just be relatable. Engaging content comes back to relatability. If you're uncomfortable about writing about yourself, I always suggest to people, put someone else's name in there, or pick up your phone and record what you want to say, get it transcribed. There's there's Dragon, and there's one online called Trent, which is $15 an hour. And you can get the transcript back, and then you can put it in to the right format that you need. But like, to create a media release, just go Google inverted pyramid. For a small business that don't know where to start with PR and looking to engage a PR firm, how much? Oh my goodness, it's almost like, how long is a piece of string? Look, it depends on what your outcomes are and your expectations, and expectations are really important. If you just want someone to write you a media release and send it out once a month, and that's all that they're doing, you can be looking at anywhere from, like we start at $250 up to, $1,200 to do that for someone. And we have a sliding scale depending on what type of business it is. If it's a startup, we know that people can't afford $1,200. So let's start down this end. But to, really engage with a PR agency, you've got to be looking at the long term, because 2-3 months is not enough to get that traction. So on average, PR firms charge anywhere from $1,500 a month all the way up to $10,000 a month. It just depends. It comes back to people. So, if you like the person at that PR agency, then you're going to get better outcomes. I'm having trouble finding PR Wire online. Oh, PR Wire. So PRWIRE, PR Wire. I think it's just PRWIRE.com. And you just sign up and it's free. PR Log is awesome. And, you may not get media coverage out of that, but it does get you in front of more people. And again, it goes back to, building that relationship and being seen in more places. So how should you commit PR as a percentage of turnover? And what sales return can you expect? Look, every business is different. So as a percentage, I believe that, at least 30% of your time should be dedicated to doing PR and marketing, regardless of what your turnover is, because that's what drives traffic. And in terms of sales return, like at the end of the day, if you're doing your own PR, you're actually doing your own sales. So you have to work out how you're going to measure whether your PR is being effective. Is it by sales? So that's different for everyone. If you've got a little widget that you can sell for $1 and you get bombarded by a million people, that's a really great outcome. But if you've got a higher price item, what is it for you? How are you going to offset the cost of the time that you dedicate into PR? And that looks like the last question.
I think that's all. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you very much, Annette, for taking the time out today to talk to us. I just want to point out that Annette's also written a book called Be Your Own Publicity Genie as well. So if you want to check that out on DIY press releases and media outreach, you can just jump onto the website publicitygenie.com to take a look.
Absolutely. And it's a workbook. So you're going to have to do some work. My husband looked at it and went, there's lines. And I went, yes, it's a workbook. And he went, oh, I'm not reading it.
Oh, that's so good. All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And once again, thank you, Annette.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And if I can help in any way, please connect with me.
Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.